Hi, my name is Erik Almas. I'm an advertising photographer that live and work in the US and also in Europe, but I'm originally from Norway. I get a lot of questions about composites and how to do them well, and also some comments about composite photography not being photography. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about a picture that I just finished and share a little bit about my thoughts about why composites, how it's done, and how one define it. If one call it photography or not, it does not quite matter to me. Deep in my heart, ingrained down in here, I am a photographer. I see light, I see shapes, I see things that I capture with my camera, and I have chosen to use the computer as an extension of that vision to fulfill what I see with my eyes afterwards. So if one chooses to not call that photography, that's completely fine with me. You can call it whatever you choose to. For me, this is how I work. Choosing to use the computer to help me sort of extend that vision. And I think the picture that I'm going to show you is a perfect example of that. I was in Namibia and I'm traveling on my own after an assignment, and I took a week then and got a driver, and he took me around. We drove for hours and hours every day so that I could shoot some pictures on my own. And in that quietness of that big desert landscape, I felt I wanted to bring some energy. And I described that whole process on my blog, how I first wanted to bring myself to it, and then afterwards I thought, oh, maybe I should have left it alone. Anyhow, that is besides the point. When I stood there on my own, the computer sort of allowed me to first capture the foreground or the landscape that I saw, and then afterwards allowed me to put a person in there that wasn't with me. So truly to stand in a place and think, how do I see it? How do I think this is? How do I absorb it? And how would I like to bring it to life? All is done through the computer, but it's happening while you're there on location and you take it all in. So I'll show you all this stuff on the computer, but in short, when you stand in a big open space and you want to capture it all, you could put on a super wide angle lens. But what happens then, you see it all, but it distorts the landscape and it makes everything really small in the background. Behind me here you see the picture, and there's a foreground element, then there's a long plane, and in the back there are these mountains. Now if you shoot this with a wide angle lens, those mountains will disappear, but if you shoot it with a long lens, almost like you see it, the landscape does become compressed and it will bring those background mountains forward, closer to the foreground object. So what the computer allowed me to do in this case was to shoot this landscape with the long lens, compressing it, bringing those mountains closer to me, but then instead of having a crop, I could shoot one picture, two pictures, and three pictures, stitch those together, and bring those mountains closer as if shot with a long lens, but gives me that perspective of that wide angle lens. So it's almost using the computer in a way that will allow you to capture something the way you see it, because you don't see with that super wide angle. You see this way and you see that way, and you absorb all the stuff around you, and the mind sort of computes that to something that gives you an emotion. And to capture that with a wide angle lens is hard. So that's why in this case I stood there and I shot this with an 85mm, and I swung my lens, stitched it together, and the landscape became in film more like I saw it when I was there. I also started thinking about something to put in the foreground, something that was in this magical space that I was. And I started shooting pictures of myself. Now, didn't really feel that was quite it, but in any case, I would have something then as a reference where I put the focus on the foreground and had something there. And then, when back in San Francisco, I shot a biker that was flying through the landscape, and I'm a mountain biker myself and I relate to that and thought it would be amazing to have that kind of energy flying through that beautiful, stunning landscape from Namibia. So that's what I did. You have it behind the scenes earlier that I posted on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out. And now, with all that talking, and you've seen some of this already, I'm going to show you the rest on the computer. I'll go through the steps of the picture, and I could also show you some wide and some narrow frames so you could see the difference in what I'm talking about. So in this instance, the computer was just amazing for me, an extraordinary tool to craft a photograph. And if that makes me a photographer or not, it's to me, an invalid sort of argument, an invalid discussion, because to me, I'm an image maker, and that's how I go about doing it. Crafting something that I necessarily might not be able to take with one photograph, but something that I'm able to make using my camera and the computer as tools. So that's it for this time. I'll show you the stuff and I'll catch you later. Cheers. Bye. All right, so here we are in front of the computer, and I'm going to start out with the raw files so that you get a sense of what I was talking about. Wide angle versus the 85 which I ended up shooting this with, and how that sort of compressed the perspective for me to get a picture that I wanted. So I'm just going to run through these a little quickly here first. This is the place I was at. This is me getting in front of the camera and doing some pictures that I thought maybe I could use with me in the foreground, or at least have it as a reference and a focus point. When I do shoot these backgrounds, I get there early and then I marry to a location. I don't really run around too much or explore too much. I go to a place, I soak it up, and I find my camera angle, and I put my camera down there, and then I follow the light, so that afterwards I have one picture with the range sort of light quality. So as you see in these, this is when the sun is higher. Me again, higher light. Then it comes into the area which is the territory of kind of the light quality that I wanted. Warmer, dustier, little bit of contrast, but not too harsh when it comes to the light. So a beautiful day. What you see at the bottom there is the hotel that I stayed at. And I looked up at the mountains and thought, oh, I got to get some height here so I could see this beautiful, beautiful vista. What you see here on the screen is a left and a right panel of a 24mm perspective. And as you see, the distance between the foreground rocks and the mountains in the back is way pulled out. If I take away that and just do this instead, you now see how the rocks seems a lot closer to the background mountains. And that's what I talked about when you could use the computer to your advantage, knowing that the longer lenses compresses the space. I could shoot this with the long lens instead of these two that I showed you first. With the wide, I could shoot it like this in 4 or 5 pieces. Let me take that away. In 4 pieces, and if you now see from left up here and then through this, you will see that this is the whole expanse that I put together in my photograph. 4 pictures stuck together as one. I shoot the clouds, same lens, so you get the same compression now by shooting up and down and back and forth. So we're going to hide this and we're going to pull up our Photoshop file. And here you see the whole background stitched together. 85mm, foreground rocks, and that whole sweep coming together. I've cheated a tiny bit. 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames. We added a little bit of rocks there to connect the pieces. And then I love the textures of the mountain. And again, this is so wide. It's a 180-degree view almost. So I wanted to compress it. So what I started to do was to enhance that, making this middle mountain bigger, to bring the mountains closer to me, to create more intimacy. Now, I didn't like the resort there. I wasn't there to do resort photography, so I added a middle ground. As you see down here in this corner, it's a part of this riverbed that I shot from a different perspective and put it in here. Again, I think about lines in my photography, things that can pull the eye inwards into the photograph and create more depth. So that's why I put this in there at an angle so that it would pull the eye inward. So that's the background file. And then we add a sky. I did have some beautiful clouds there, but I wanted drama, and this is the cloud that I shot earlier that afternoon. So big, beautiful, beautiful cloud, and that's the landscape. Added a little bit of contrast, you see in the river in the middle. Again, pull more attention to it, give it more contrast. Now, I wanted the biker to come flying at some distance, not just stand there. I did do 2 versions of this picture. One where he stood at that rock overlooking the vista, just like I stood there myself, but I wanted more energy, more. So we added a rock there at the top. We put a tree behind it to ground it a little bit. I added some flying dirt, and then of course we added the biker. And that's pretty much the picture. On top of this, we added a little bit of contrast. Again, thinking about more depth, I actually added another mountain. You see this layer right here? Added one more step so that there would be even more dramatic and more depth to the photograph. And at the top comes some color treatments, giving it more warmth, more of that dusty quality that you saw, or that I saw when I was there taking the photograph. So that's a quick run through. Ask me why composites, and this is really it. It's really an extension of the photography, an extension of what you see in your mind's eye, and making that happen in that two-dimensional surface, which your picture is. So hope that helped, hope that answered some questions, and I will see you next time. If you want to check out the behind the scenes from this shoot, the link is below, and also check out SLR Lounge and the DVD that I have for sale there. Cheers, bye.